It's time to be woke. Take off your shades. It helps see through the smoke. Cause the wicked hide behind the cloak. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog. What's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the song, we out here, yeah. Speeding the fact.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. I'm Andy Kennedy. It is a cool and rainy Monday here in Central Ontario in the middle of Canada. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm just going to pre-apologize if we have any bandwidth issues. For some reason, my bandwidth is not what it usually is, so there might be some technical difficulties, but just be aware that it's a situation we might run into. But we are going to proceed as normal, like we do every Monday morning. Today we have we did have a guest that was going to be coming on. There have been some issues, and so we're
here. I'm here now.
Okay. All right.
Hey,
Excellent. Great. Thank you for joining us today. This would be a good time for me to also introduce my lovely and talented co-host, Miss Carrie Barber. Good morning, Carrie.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, and we're live, so absolutely anything could happen and does. So yeah, we were a little worried. You know, it's that last minute. Are we going to have a guest? Are we not? So we do, and we'll get to him in just a minute. But I have some administrative stuff to cover. So good morning, everybody from Fred Hampton Leftist joining us this morning. If you're watching on YouTube, I need you to click the like, subscribe, and the notification button. Do that now, and you will never miss any of the broadcasts that come up on this particular network. The other thing is we are humbled and delighted to welcome new Patreon members who joined up over the weekend. And every time somebody donates something to our program is just so humbling. It doesn't matter what the amount is, every dime counts, and we so appreciate it. So thank you so much to Sherry, to Joe, to Lorna, to Renee, and then of course to all of our previous patron donors, Chris, David, Dean, and Mike. So we have such a low overhead here that every bit really counts, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And then also the House of Public Discourse. We are honored and delighted to be part of their lineup for all of their progressive news and everything that is going on that channel. They're on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and do this amazing podcast lineup there too. So for me personally, I am just blown away by the number of progressive outlets that are starting to rise and take over kind of the propaganda machine of what's going on with the mainstream media. So with that, I am delighted.
That's awesome. Did you know, Carrie, that every time we get a new Patreon subscriber, an angel gets its wings?
That's exactly right. It's like, yeah, nobody kills a kitten.
Or showed a cat video of any kind. So
right, exactly. So hey, Mike is joining us this morning. I was going to say we have missed Mike for a couple weeks. You must have been busy. And Mike sent me an article about info security that I have been looking into, and I want to bring that up on Wednesday. So once again, if you have a story or an article you want to call to our attention, we do some research on it. Mike says, work. Well, good. You better get it, girl. Work. Work. So,
Mike, it's nice to know that you're back from Mars, buddy. Congrats, you made it.
Yeah, exactly. And then Joe Said, I hope I'm pronouncing your first name correctly. But good morning, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So, all right, without further ado, I want to get an introduction in because we've got a heavy, heavy topic this morning. So this particular gentleman is an activist, an author, a journalist, and started work on the collaboration that is the House of Public Discourse. So welcome, Mr. Johnny Hill. How are you this morning?
I am wonderful. I feel great to be on your show. I'm very honored to be here. I love you two guys. I've been a huge fan. I want to make reference, that we got a person that's looking down smiling right now, and her name is Pamela Stitchler.
Right.
She and but we do have a very serious topic to talk about today. It's very important, and the House of Public Discourse is honored to be here on your show today.
Thank you, and we love to have you. And yeah, Miss Pamela united a whole bunch of folks, particularly in the progressive journalism space. So
Sure did.
thank
Sure
you
did.
always, Pamela.
Right.
So let's get into it. It's a heavy topic. Get your
Right.
coffee, get no judgment, whatever it is you're drinking this morning.
Right.
Let's get into this because this is something that we need to carry with us in the cause and effect space. And you wrote this article, which I posted the link to, and it was about the global displacement. This is the refugee situation that it hit an all-time high, and it's been labeled a failure of humankind. So, Johnny, why don't you take us through number one, why you wrote this, and why should I care sitting in the United States, privileged and comfy?
I think it's a great question. The reason I researched and wrote this article is because everywhere we look, Miss Carrie and Andy, people are uh, always becoming more and more homeless and displaced, and it's not because of any actions of their own in most cases. And what's even more frightening is that much of this displacement's happened around the world, but the prognosis for the coming year, we've got rent moratoriums here in the United States that's going to put a lot of people on the streets. I just wrote an article yesterday where we've got over 25 states that are, dropping the unemployment benefits. So this displacement and people being homeless and nowhere to go, it's going to come front and center to the United States here as well. But the real reason I wrote this article was that at the bottom of each number lies a human being. And we should make considerable greater effort, I think, you guys, to stop and end these conflicts of violence. And I think the more we report and write and talk about it, the more effective we can be as our purpose in the House of Public Discourse has always been to report on the causation of things that cause all these problems that everybody knows about. And the comment that an epic failure of humanity is the order of the day is something that I think we need to change course on.
Okay. So when we talk about refugees, I did post the first question I had was, what's the difference between particularly here in the U.S. We've had an uptick in the rhetoric, not just from the but also on the left, where you have the little memes posted of a child laying in a gutter and say we should never have an immigration policy while there is one homeless U.S. child. The reality is we don't care about either of them based on policy. So when we're talking about cause and effect, I'm thinking in particular about Syrian refugees.
Right.
And the conflict there and the U.S. involvement in it, because one of the largest encampments is in Jordan, and that's an entire city, millions of people from Syria in an encampment in Jordan. So what we're really talking about is multiple geopolitical things going on. where the U.S. is actually complicit, if not directly acting. Would you say that's accurate?
That is, well, the facts bear that out, Carrie. I mean, anyone with any that keeps their nose to the grindstone and reads just any kind of accurate reporting knows that America's regime change, foreign policy, imperialism is much of the cause for much of this displacement around the world in Syria and other places as well, Central America, and the problems that we're seeing down on our southern border um, are directly affected by American foreign policy, in my point of view.
And I would also add to that, Carrie, that there's a lot of what we've talked about on a number of occasions as the main export of the United States as neoliberalism and a right-wing narrative of, refugees are coming into your country. They're bad actors. They're here to steal your jobs. They're here to steal our resources. Your tax dollar is going to pay for them. And we've, debunked that on several occasions. And you see different places where the governments, any of the governments, including the UK, that ran Brexit against refugees coming into this country all over the world are very mirrored in their policies against them, when it was the foreign policy of those governments that created the need for these people to flee their countries in the first place, right?
That's exactly right, Andy. And by the way, it's so good to finally get a chance to speak with you, sir. Neoliberalism, we have done much research in the House of Public Discourse and writing about it. I've just recently posted an article about neoliberalism. In essence, says whatever's good for society is good for, whatever's good for the markets is great for society. In a nutshell, that's neoliberalism. And we know that that's just not the case. Neoliberal, we hear, the terms thrown around, socialism and all that kind of stuff, but we very seldom hear the term neoliberalism outside the progressive community, and that is why I feel it's important that we educate and inform people on the harm neoliberalism has done to this country. And I think neoliberalism is sort of kind of the germ that got all this mess started in the first place. I'm done.
Well, actually, the facts bear that out, don't they? I mean, not to catch you off guard here, but when I was doing some research based on this topic, one of the things that I did not know was, all right, so we have these international treaties. I was taking a look at our role in all of this, and there's international treaties developed by the United Nations that all the member nations sign on to, including the U.S. But what I thought was interesting is it was under President Clinton, that he decided, and this is a direct quote, he says, "We cannot and will not surrender our borders to those who wish to exploit our history of compassion and justice," which is completely opposite what the entire agreement was about. These were about refugees who are not trying to exploit, trying to live and survive. And so this was under he said this in 1993, reformed the way that we accepted asylum seekers and refugees. And by the way, for those who don't know, we had all the Haitian refugees here.
Right.
And it was under Obama that we expelled. We sent them back to Haiti.
We sure did.
Like, yeah, good. We're sorry about the earthquake. So let's step back a bit and talk about the difference between an immigrant and a refugee.
Okay.
There's a huge difference there, isn't there?
There's a huge difference. Now, I want to, if we were step back in history a little bit, think about it. We had Reagan, and then we had Bush. Then we had Bush Jr. And then when Bill Clinton come along, I'll be honest with you, I was like so sick of those guys. I mean, come on, give me the guy from Georgia. He's got a Southern accent. Let's put him in there. Arkansas. Let's put him in there. It can't be no worse. He kind of sounds like me. And I worked my tail off for Obama 2 times. And I am no longer a member of the Democratic Party because of some of the things that you brought up, Miss Carrie. There was a huge con job done on the campaign trail where we heard hope and change, and then it got up and went shortly after taking office. And that money, I wasn't sitting there. This is only speculation on Johnny's part, but that money got to him, or something got to him, because he changed. Because I worked feverishly on his campaign both times, and I know what the man said, and we know what the man did. Not only did he deport, in reference to your comment and going to your comments, Carrie, yes, he deported Obama and Clinton both deported as many immigrants as the Bushes. It was Obama who expanded the Patriot Act and surveillance type issues on American people. Now, is Obama Donald Trump? No, not in my view. But in essence, the neoliberalism took over in his campaign from what I see from my vantage point. I think he's a good man, but there's that Washington two-step up there up on the hill that people take, and the vastness and the largeness and just the overall bureaucracy of Washington, D.C., it just is unfathomable to many of us. And all of this has percolated out into society and in the form of foreign policy and military industrial complex wants and needs. We have to manufacture war. I mean, America's tradition is war propaganda, and this refugee situation is just a side effect of that.
Yeah, it's a causality, and obviously we can argue it's another export. But Andy, the graphic refugees by the numbers, because I really want to drive this. This is not inconsequential numbers, and I want to put it in relation to something that the U.S. audience can better understand and put into practice as they go through their day and consider exactly what's going on here. So when we look at the numbers, and these are international consensus numbers, we're talking about almost 80 million people. So from a U.S. perspective, this is Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and part of New York.
Wow.
All of those people who are now displaced, let's say they cannot go back to their cities, so they're going into rural areas that don't have the infrastructure and support systems in place, or they're moving into other cities that also are now heavily, the strain on resources is there. So where do these people get their assistance? And what they're doing now is they're going through the UN. So here is another cause and effect down the line. When the Trump administration announced that they were going to remove the US from the UN, what they were really saying is we were going to remove ourselves from some of these committees, and therefore some of the financial obligation, not burden, but obligation that the US had to provide aid to some of these areas. Right? So we were going to cause and participate in the cause of these people becoming refugees, but we were not going to take the responsibility financially or supporting them to make sure that they don't get sick and die because they're refugees. So what has happened right now under the Biden administration, he's actually, I could find no evidence, and if one of our very smart viewers wants to prove me wrong on this, I would be happy. I can't find where Biden rejoined all of these committees or has rejoined our financial obligation to support some of these refugees encampments across the global sphere, including Venezuela, since we want
Right.
to bring that one up. That's 3.5 million people in Venezuela after we, let's be open and honest about it, after we interfered and manipulated their elections.
Absolutely.
So,
Surrounded their country. Go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Well,
I there was one thing that I wanted to just briefly talk about. Because it was, and we're having some problems. Obviously, Carrie, your bandwidth has really dropped down, and sometimes your audio is dropping out. I'm not 100% sure why that's happening, but I just wanted to apologize to our audience for that. There's for some reason there's a lot less electrons in the internet today, so we're not sure why that is. But anyways, what I was going to suggest is that there was a lot of people that were on the Biden administration because the number of refugees on the southern border all of a sudden skyrocketed, and then people, if you look at it logically, there was probably a lot less people that were trying to get across the border when Trump was in power, just because of the threat that he posed to them in terms of his white nationalist views and racism and what he said, and the narrative in mainstream media. And as soon as the Biden administration took over, I think that signaled to a lot of the refugees and people from other countries who really, only are getting part of the story, saying, okay, it's safe for us to make this journey now, right? So that we had a lot more, but the Biden administration should have known that. It's not a stretch to understand that logic, right? So they should have prepared for that. But instead, we're being overrun now, and woe is me, and then Kamala Harris, don't come. It's not safe. It's not dangerous. So this is all, smoke and mirrors, just like every other neoliberal regime we've seen before. I am not impressed by it. And I'm sorry to interject there, but please, Johnny, go ahead.
No, well, I concur. I concur completely. Our House of Public Discourse Forum, we're not a big mega group on Facebook, but we got some really powerful people, political activists in our group, and I'm telling you, we were Bernie Sanders all the way. We had a lot of reservations about Joe Biden. But when you're faced with, do we go with? I mean, in 2016, I went with Jill Stein. This time, I went with Biden because of who was sitting in the White House. But here's some bottom lines, guys. In the absence of a significant action from the international community on conflict resolution, climate change, immigration, along with key factors contributing to forced displacements, the UN report prognosis for 2021 is not good. It's not good at all. We've got severe food shortages in countries that have been displaced. That adds, that's insult to injury to those folks. Not only am I homeless, but there's nothing to eat. And the question is no longer whether forced displacements will exceed 100 million people, according to the UN, but rather when that amount is reached. In the current environment, the conflict prevention, ensuring that displaced persons have access to solutions, has never been more vital. And at a time when that is the case, we've got, like you pointed to, Andy, vice president saying, hey, don't come over here. The melting pot, we're not the melting pot anymore. Don't pay any attention. Don't pay any attention to that, what's written at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. Okay. Bring us your masses. And also, if their skin, and I don't mean to interject anything racist on your show, but I'll guarantee you the fact that their complexion of their skin has something to do with it as well.
Oh,
Well, wait a
absolutely.
second. Let's get on that point. And Andy, this is the second graphic with the really pretty colors in the chart. Because Johnny, I had that same question about who are the refugees coming into the United States.
Right.
And I found the data. So in this chart, if you look at it, and it's real small at the bottom, so I'll just let you know that light blue at the very bottom, these are our African refugees. Anybody's coming from an African country. Above that in purple is Asia. This could be anywhere in Eurasia, Pakistan, India, other countries. And then green is the European. So these are the westernized countries largely. And then Latin America is kind of that pinkish orange. Right in the middle, it's very small. The largest group is South Asia and Near East. So this is China, Thailand, Vietnamese, Filipino, Taiwanese. That's the largest number of refugees to the US. But you can see in 2018, under the Trump administration, all of those compressed and dropped considerably. So I was a little surprised that from 2000 to 2018, the highest populations of refugees were coming from Asia in the United States. That is not what we're told. That's not what the rhetoric says. Rhetoric says it's all coming from our southern border. You know, the brown people, the bad brown people, the bad hombres, all of that sort of thing. But that's the data doesn't bear this out at all. So
I understand that, and I think the reason for that being the case is because of the color of those folks, the skin of those people that are coming from the southern border. Do we have any Asian kids up underneath the bridge in El Paso in cages? I don't think so.
no, you're absolutely right about that. So I want to get to some of the comments from our audience who is weighing in this morning. Mike says the reason I couldn't find the information on Biden's administration rejoining those committees is because he hasn't done it, and that's what I was afraid of. And then Piano Man has weighed in, so thank you for joining us, Piano Man. He says, great show, and yes, neoliberals have caused this mess, but they are part of the corrupt two-party system that serves a corrupt government. It's a system that doesn't work, but only for a few. And then he goes on to say, I'm assuming it's he, my apology. I was born in Russia, and I see Soviet-type government coming because it's better living in Russia and they don't lie and are humble. I'm going to push back on that a little bit. You have a massive oligarchy in Russia and a whole lot of corruption there. We covered that in last week. So, and then Jay joins us this morning. Good morning, Jay. He says, very interesting and wonderful discussion. So thank you. And then Black Jock is back again. Good morning. He says, the system isn't broken, far from it. It's rotten to the core by design and therefore beyond reform. Chris Hedges has detailed this collapse with alarming accuracy based on experience and scholarship. Okay, so Johnny, here I'm going to put you on the spot. Jack brings up Chris Hedges. Now, you are pretty humble in your experience and activism and authorship, journalism. You're along the same lines as Chris Hedges. So do you see the same thing that Chris is saying?
I'm a fan of Chris Hedges. Okay, I am a huge fan of Chris Hedges. I think he brings up one reason he's no longer with the New York Times is he is he speaks his mind. He's honest. Do I agree wholeheartedly with everything Chris Hedges says? No, because I'm a progressive just like you and Andy and everybody else. I have my own way of thinking,
That's what makes us individuals. We have our own opinions.
And I'll bring up another point. I think what we're going up against is authoritarianism, right-wing authoritarianism. But what I have learned through my study of that is there's also a left-wing authoritarianism as well. And as progressives, one of our Achilles heels is that we can lay 10 issues down on the table And we can all agree on 8 of them wholeheartedly. But as free thinkers and getting that solution to come to a concise compromise on those 2 that we don't has been elusive for progressives to this point. I think that's why you got a lot. I was a lifelong Democrat, and it was not an easy situation for me to become an independent. But after 2016, I made that choice. Now there is, and we wrote an article recently that there are about 60%, and I've done a lot of exhaustive research on it. I'm not saying Johnny's right, but I'm close to being right. There's about 60% of the American people who are calling for something different than what we got right now.
Something different in what way?
Miss Carrie, I wish I had the answer to that question.
I don't think anybody has the answer to that question.
I can tell you on a daily basis, that's what we're searching for here in the House of Public Discourse. And I know you guys are too. I know that's why the law of attraction has brought us together. And that collectively, my vision is collectively me, you, Carrie, other independent media shows that create an alternative to the mainstream media. We have a serious responsibility here. We have a serious responsibility to try to be as professional and accurate as we can be on reporting about the issues of the day that we're talking about, like neoliberalism. It has so many discrepancies. It has so many just terrible traits to it that I think it's, as far as the House of Public Discourse, it's one of our main focuses to report about is the effects of neoliberalism, and we don't have a real hard time at it. All you got to do is look at your news feed every day to see the results of it.
So for those of you who are just tuning in, we are talking to Johnny Hill, longtime activist, author, journalist, and founder of House of Public Discourse. You can find that podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. So one of the questions that came in, and if you do have a question for Johnny, please type it in here. But Blackjack says, inverted totalitarianism as described by Sheldon Woolen. And he says the right or left is irrelevant, as you have rightly stated. So Blackjack is agreeing with you on this. And I think that, when we talk about the political sphere, how do we handle this? Because I'm seeing a lot of the comments going that, Mike says this is not a bug, it's a feature, it's working as intended. And then Gary South says the system, garbage in, garbage out. And we're all trying to figure out, what do we do with this? At the same time, both of the duopoly and the political system here in the U.S., most people have done as you've done, Johnny, moved away or left the party in particular. So the majority of people in the United States are not affiliated with either the right or the left political party, but are independents. So right. What do we do now? We have actually people calling for open rebellion, revolution, right, particularly in the Trump sphere. But then, our good friend Alan Howell is advocating for the same thing, a work stoppage, a strike, something like that. So here we are right now looking at the refugee crisis, the cause and effect, all of these things. And, to your point about homelessness here in the U.S., I posted a link to our good friend Tina Desiree Berg, who shot a video of LA police writing a citation to people living in tents on the beach. And the citation, amazingly, was for being in a tent during business hours. So for those who aren't familiar with how the law works, if you write a citation to a homeless person and they don't have access to find out when their hearing is, or if it moved, or time, or any of that sort of thing, and they don't show up, that's an automatic warning. And that just puts them into the legal system where they can be arrested at will for whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do we save our future, Johnny? It's a huge question, but
Well,
Yeah.
Miss Carrie, I wrote an article about a 5,000 word long one. You know, in journalism this day, they say people's attention span is about that of a goldfish, that you need to write 500 and 700 word articles at the most. But poverty has been criminalized in America. And they do it very low. They do it through ordinances, you know, no sleeping on the park bench. They do it through local laws, and the real bottom line is that the Chamber of Commerce type people, they just don't want these eyesores running around on the streets in their neighborhood. So the only way they handle that is by throwing them in jail. And create, and you're right, a homeless person is the average homeless person barely has enough money to buy themselves a McDouble at McDonald's, much less pay an ordinance or fine or fee, or even make their court date. So what happens is they normally get a fine, and then they fail to appear for court. So now they got two charges against them: failure to appear. So it's a very complex. I have an idea. I believe people can have regurgitate the issues all they like, but finding the solutions is the real key here. Like for example, here in Roseville, Michigan, in the Motown Get Town, we've got a Kmart that has been sitting vacant for, I know, 4 to 5 years. If we could go in there and turn that into housing in some way, there's all kinds of different things we can do. I have the answers? No, I don't. But we are heading we are heading for worse times, according to the research and what the recent UN report stated. This is not getting better; it's getting worse.
So a lot of that is exacerbated by climate change. Like here in the U.S., we saw the very dire warnings that kind of passed under the radar about California, Arizona, and Nevada, and the water crisis. So that's a big deal that has never been seen before, and this goes beyond the blackouts and brownouts. This is water, and it's more than just you can't water your lawn. This is
Right.
kind of a big deal.
Well, they've got a. I just talked to my son in Houston, Texas, where I lived for many years, and they've got a situation where they can't even turn their dryers on, or they've been told not to turn their dryers on to dry their clothes. What that means or the reason why, I don't know, but there's all these little perky things that they seem insignificant, that when you stop and think about it, I mean, why are they telling people not to run their dryers? There's got to be a reason behind it.
That's exactly right. Well, their grid is for shit.
Well, their grid is for shit, and I'm gonna tell you something. I wouldn't stick my big toe in the Galveston Bay. Once you cross, I'm originally from North Carolina. If you guys can't tell, I got a huge Southern drawl. I'm a Southern boy, but I used to drive from North Carolina, where I'm from, to Houston because that's where my son lives. And I'm telling you, when you come down Interstate 10 and you come out of Florida and you get to around Mobile, Alabama, from Mobile, Alabama to Houston, it smells like a Lysol can. I mean, it smells like chemical, and you can see the refineries everywhere. It's a carbon nightmare down there. The air quality is terrible. The drinking water is, they flood. They built that particular city on a floodplain. I don't want to get off track here, but all of this is neoliberalism in a nutshell. I mean, whatever's good for society, whatever's good for the markets is good for society. Hey, it's good to let's throw up a bunch of apartment complex in a floodplain. Who cares if it floods every once in a while? It's just
insurance.
right.
So, Johnny, I want to interject a little bit. Blackjack has a question for you. He says, who do you think will organize and weaponize And he puts this in capital letters, the angry, disaffected party that's coming.
Oh, good question. I tell you, I have never. There is a huge chasm on the left that has that I have ran into in my advocacy. There, there's this thought that we got to tear everything down and start all over again. Now, I understand that sentiment, Miss Carrie and Andy. I really do. But pragmatism, pragmatism has ruined a whole lot of really great efforts in this country. The pragmatic thought. But I think there are some things in America that are good. There are some institutions that we should keep. But the one solution that I have found to, or the path that we have chosen to take is the promotion of nonpartisan election reform. Our electoral system is wacko. It's wacko. I
And that's
think
the
I,
technical term.
yes, I think people have lost faith in the electoral process. So that old truism, well, it's not a truism anymore, but that old vote the bombs out doesn't necessarily work anymore. And I think the campaign of Bernie Sanders kind of proves that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you bring up a good point when we talk about partisanship, because for people who aren't aware, your local elections, this is your school board, your library board, a lot of those introductory political spaces, those are nonpartisan, and they're nonpartisan for a reason. So if logic is to stand, we have those as nonpartisan races. Why don't we have that across the board so that we can actually focus on policy, right? So if I'm the batshit crazy racist Nazi candidate, you're gonna know based on my policies and my rhetoric. I don't have to have the team jersey, blue, red, whatever. You're gonna understand based on what I'm saying, what I'm doing, and what policies I advocate for. So I think you're onto something there. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, it's a work in process. It's a work in process. Progressivism is, first of all, progressive policies are popular across the board, especially on the local level. Especially on the local level. It's not that what we're standing for is not wanted. It's pure partisan politics. I call it party identification infection in this country. I don't fit this mold. I'm a polar opposite than my mother and father and brother and sister when it comes to politics. But so many people from birth are indoctrinated into their political persuasions, basically from their parents and also from their communities. For example, I'll use Johnny for an example. I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, a very, very ultra conservative Bible Belt region of the country. And I just wasn't that type of guy. And it was tough living in that environment when everybody's saying "Ruha, Ruha" for Reagan, and I'm sitting here 21 years old, and these terms outsourcing become prevalent in my mind. I grew up in the apparel industry. I was an apparel salesman rep for many, many years, followed in my father's footsteps, and I saw our industry be took right away from us and shipped overseas. And it was my father and mother and brother and sister who were voting for the very people that did it. So I think we got a huge problem of people's party identification outweighs what the real policies are. And they vote. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you brought up Reagan, and Reagan was the person who turned me on to politics, right? So I was a kid, I think I was in like fourth grade. Now I'm dating myself. But I remember him saying ketchup is a vegetable, and as a kid, I was like, "That's crazy."
Yeah.
And the next step was my grandfather sitting me down to explain to me that the top tax bracket was being taxed at 75%, and how horrible that was. And then looking back, I'm like, they were talking about the 1%, Grandpa. That wasn't you.
Well,
You were an encyclopedia salesman. Oh my God, why would you care? So I think we all had that. And in fact, Piano Man, who mentioned, he's in our chat, and he said he's an immigrant from Russia. He actually says, I remember coming from Russia, going into Kresge's, I think it is, and seeing the colored and white only signs for, I'm assuming he's talking about the entrances, and his mother crying, trying to explain to me what this was and what it, so when we all come to the realization, it's just like, when you're a child, you think your parents are heroes. And then as you get older and more aware, you realize that they're fallible people, just like everyone else. Having
right.
that same introspection of our country doesn't mean you love your country less. It means you want it to be better. We want to live in the country that the Constitution says we have, right? So
Right.
So
Well, it was,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. It was Reagan who was responsible for the monopoly capitalism that we're facing today. When one of those things that he did, they repealed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which basically led for the creation of your big box retailers like Walmart and all these others. Me and my father in 1981, I think we had about 400 mom and pop haberdasheries all across not America, but North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, which was our sale territory. We had about 400 accounts. We sold members only jackets, and we represented members only, which was John Travolta's jacket in the Saturday Night Fever movie.
Now you're dating yourself, Johnny.
Well, I'm the elder statesman among you guys. Okay, Grandpa's in the house today, but the thing. I don't want to get off track here. The thing that I've noticed over the years that this monopoly capitalism, it ran by 2004, when I decided, hey, I just can't do this anymore. I think we were down to about 175 accounts because, for example, our members only jacket sold for about $45 in a man's haberdashery. Well, the owner of the label bought into the neoliberalism and sold the label into Walmart. Then they went and put members only jackets in all of these Walmarts. And how is Johnny going to sell the members only jacket for $19.95 wholesale when that's what Walmart's selling it for?
And if I recall, I think that the members only jacket had approximately 14 cents worth of material to it.
Yes, it was a very highly profitable jacket. It's in the Hall of Fame if you want to know the truth of labels. But yes, it started being. Yeah, that's another thing, Andy. You bring up an excellent point. All of those jackets were being made here in the United States in mills in Piedmont, North Carolina. You hear High Point, the home of furniture. Well, Piedmont, North Carolina was the home of the textile industry in America for many, many years. And then they moved it overseas, and that's when they started, the sweatshops and all of that kind of stuff. And you're exactly right. I think I can't remember what the exact cost of making the jacket was, but there was a huge profit being made with the sale of the jacket. And I'm just using, this is just one example, guys.
Right.
This is just one example.
So we have time for one more question before we get to closing. And I was gonna ask Black Jock's question, and then he admitted that he favors Western style barbecue. So I'm not so sure.
Okay, I can tell you what. I can tell you. Hey, he's talking. He's talking to. He's talking to the barbecue king here.
Well,
It,
I am a Memphis rub gal.
okay.
With my smoker, my opinion is if you need barbecue sauce, you've done something wrong from the beginning.
There you go. Well, what we did, what he's talking about, what this gentleman's talking about down in Eastern North Carolina, we use a vinegar-based sauce. No ketchup. You know, we use a vinegar-based sauce, and they use a tomato-based sauce. So the different, like we cook it the same way, but it's just the sauce that we use. It's a different sauce. But I particularly like the Memphis rub sauce. I like the Memphis too.
I like it. Just a quick tip here, if you're tuning in, what Memphis rub. Go look up Memphis rub on Meathead. If you're not already subscribed to Meathead, there's your barbecue. But let me get back to politics real quick.
Okay.
Here was Blackjack's real question. He says Sanders isn't really left politically. He just seems that way in the U.S. It fits the narrative of both the DNC and RNC. So, Johnny, do you think progressivism must move to an economic class basis to succeed?
Oh, that's a good question. Now, I got to push back a little bit. I happen to
on the
think,
politics or the barbecue.
No, I gotta push back a little bit. I think Bernie's a genuine person. I think he's had I think personally Bernie was forced to having to run in the Democratic Party because of the electoral system that we have before us. Going back to Chris Hedges and Noam Chomsky and several people on the left tried to convince him that he could win as an independent, and Bernie didn't feel that way. And I would like to interject something here. I understand the argument that creating a third party is going to be extremely, extremely difficult and take a lot of time. I personally know that I will probably not see it in my lifetime. But there is the duopoly has run its course. The American experiment was always an experiment. When the forefathers created our democracy, at the time they created it, there was nothing really like it in the world at the time. I think what was Franklin made that comment, it's a republic if we can keep it. And we're at a boiling point right now in America where that experiment is really being tested. And to answer this guy's question, economics is going to play a part in any situation in this world that we live in today. There's no way around it. But I personally, call me pie in the sky, I think that we can move forward through a change of culture, and we need to formulate game plans and mechanisms that people can gravitate to that changes the narrative of red versus blue and all of that. And I don't know if that let's see, what was Sting's song? How did Sting say it? We are all just spirits of the material world. There's no political solution to our troubled evolution, that people have lost faith in Constitution. And so there is definitely got to be a restart, a reboot. But I think it's just like with your computer. You've got several programs that are really good that you don't want to lose. And you got others that are just eating up your memory and slowing us down. That's the best answer I can give.
Well, I'd say that's not too bad an answer.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Listen, I just wanted to quickly interject. I know we're running late on time, Carrie, but we have a lot of younger people, including people in our new associates with Fredhampton leftists that identify as communists, right, or socialists or whatever, and that's wonderful because their minds are open and they're not dictated by the Red Scare that folks our age, had to go through that propaganda stuff and everything. And so, there are a lot of people that are calling for, violent revolution to make those changes. But of course, on the other hand, you've got half of the population that gets so upset to the point where they can barely function because their local Starbucks ran out of mocha chocolate sprinkles for their half-calf latte, right? So what does that look like? And the reason I bring those examples up is when people ask me my political ideology or whatever it is, I don't know what to tell them except that I'm a devout Andy-crat or a anarcho-Andyist, because the future to me is uncertain. I know where I want it to go. I know what our end result is, a more fair, more just society that looks out for the people and nobody gets left behind. How we're going to get there, we haven't done that yet. We don't know. It's like wanting to win the football game and knowing how all of the plays are going to go through the game before the game starts. It's impossible. We haven't done it yet. It's like looking to the future and saying, well, what are the inventions of the future going to look like? Well, how the fuck should we know? They haven't been invented yet.
That's right.
That's the whole point of this. We have to have our minds open and we have to realize we don't know yet until we do it. And if it gets us there, then it was a good thing.
That's exactly right, Mr. Andy. And since you alluded to a sports analogy, I'm going to put it this way.
Okay.
We've been running up the middle and around the end, and we've been gaining 3 yards in a cloud of dust as progressives, and we've been moving the chains and getting some first downs, but we're not in the first quarter anymore. We're in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to take on a Tom Brady approach, and we're going to have to throw over the defense and score some touchdowns on the long pass. How we do that, I do not know either, but I'm searching, and I think that's what we're all doing. That's why we're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we care, and we love what we're doing, and we think it serves a purpose. And I think we are making progress on social media, believe it or not, in influencing what goes on. And I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to only get better because we're going to continue to improve as journalists ourselves.
And to build on that sports analogy, and I know this is killing Carrie, but to build on the sports analogy, we got to find a way to put the rules in place so that the oligarch class and the corporation class stop moving the goalposts backwards on us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, I am a huge football fan. I got all of that. And in the fourth quarter, when you're down by either 7-14 or more, that's when you go for the Hail Mary play. You go for the trick plays. And that is what we are not doing as progressives. So
right.
This is why we did the entire segment on what servant leadership is. Because servant leadership is the fastest way to lead a group, be a credible leader, all of us in it together, and then we can make those strides, or we can continue tearing down other podcasts, doing all of that and not getting it through. So one of the things that we pointed out, and I know we got to get out of here, but of course we could talk forever. This big event coming up in July for Medicare for All, that is huge. That is absolutely huge. So if you are not already signed up in a city near you or trying to organize one, you got to get from behind the keyboard. You got to get from behind the computer screen. And for my disabled allies, I get it. You do what you're going to do. Do whatever you can. The rest of you, get off your asses. Let's get this done and make sure that we have the pushback, the people in the streets. And this is part of what Alan Howell was talking about on a gentler scale, but that's us out there in community talking to people. showing that we need this now, and it is absolutely unconscionable during a pandemic we don't already have this. So this begins the pushback. We're starting to see it, and now we need to keep that momentum on, because when you get the crowd behind you in the fourth quarter, that is a guaranteed way to get a win.
There
So
you go.
I'm all for the football analogy. So Johnny, thank you so much. And for those of you who are tuning in, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button on Fred Hampton Leftist for the YouTube channel, so you don't miss anything. And then Johnny, you are a founder of the House of Public Discourse.
Right.
Just a real quick rundown on that. How can people follow it, listen to it, take it with them to work when they're organizing?
Okay. You can find, first of all, you can find us at www.houseofpublicdiscourseradio.com. You can find our Progressive News Network on YouTube, which we're just getting started with YouTube. We're on iTunes, Spotify. We have a really good audience on iHeart, which is a coming, and you can catch us in your car while you're waiting for your wife to come out of the grocery store, and you're sitting in the parking lot. And you can find us here on Facebook at the House of Public Discourse Forum. We have a lot of engaging conversation. We have some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people in this group. We're not a debate group. We're a think tank. If you want to debate, you can debate anyway. We want civil discourse, not uncivil discourse. And I just want to say it has been a huge honor to be on this show. I look forward to us growing and getting better and better. I think we can make a difference, and I think we can be an alternative that we're seeing spit out on the mainstream media, which is indoctrinating and brainwashing a whole generation of people. Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Johnny. All right, Andy, we are way over time. Why don't you take us out, please?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Johnny. I love your commentary. I would say great minds think alike, and we need voices like yours in our movement to help educate people in a civil way, right?
Absolutely.
We need to stop yelling at one another and start listening, right?
If we don't, we're gonna fail, Mr. Andy. It's just that simple.
Absolutely. That's why God gave you 2 ears and just 1 mouth, right? You should listen twice as much as you talk.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Johnny. And as always, Carrie, wonderful show, and some great lead up investigation stuff that you've done, obviously, just like every time. I'm such a fan of yours. You have no idea. Anyways, to everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've learned a little bit, maybe got some things to think about. Enjoy the rest of your lovely Monday as much as you can, even if you're working. And we will see you here bright and early on Wednesday morning. Take care, everyone.
We bout that, bringing the song. We out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hammer the dog, we keeping it G.